The stability that he brings, you lost Brandon Brooks this year. You lost Jason Peters the year before. It's now he and Lane Johnson are kind of the old men of that line. You have a young left side there anchored by Mailata. That's still going to be a great strength of this team coming forward this year, and gives me real hope.
We've got a triple back attack here on Birds 365. McDonald, McMullen, and Glen Macnow, the host of the Eagles pregame show. Longtime Philadelphia sports talk show host on WIP. Good enough to jump aboard with us here. G-Mac, are you pumped up for the Eagles season? Come on, you got to get me ready to go out there and block. The Eagles are aggressive. They've re-signed you to host the pregame show.
Yes.
He's checking all the boxes.
That was important. Yes, that was the most important signing first, to make sure that I continue to go. Everything else after that just is, gravy. I heard you before, and I hear your disappointment that they haven't been that aggressive, but they have this thing coming up in April, and it's called the draft, and they have 3 picks in the top 19, and they will either use those picks, hopefully correctly, or they will make moves with those picks to give this offseason an entirely new viewpoint.
I agree with that, Glenn. But you've been around this town for a very long time, so you've heard this a lot over the years. And when a coach talks about a receiver and brings up his blocking first, what does that tell you? Because Frank Reich was on with our buddy Dan Celio here on JAKIB Media, and he was talking about Zach Pascal, and he defaulted to he's a great blocker before he caught himself and went on to some other things. What does that tell you when a coach defaults to he's a great blocker as a receiver?
Yeah, it's the second worst thing you can hear, only ahead of he lines up correctly. We also heard it in this town a few times. Zach Pascal's nothing exciting, and I don't think the problem with Zach Pascal is people are looking at him as other teams are getting Devontae Adams and Christian Kirk and, Robert Woods and big-time receivers are moving around the league, Juju Smith-Schuster, and so Zach Pascal's kind of like the last girl left at the bar that couldn't get the date, so you're taking her home. I'm not excited about it. If he's your slot guy, if he catches 45, 50 passes a game, that's a game. Yeah, right. A season, that's about what I expect. And he's certainly not a game changer. I'm not excited about it, but he's not a bad player.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good description. Yeah.
Sound like Link from Mod Squad. Here's my issue though. Is this because John continues to harp on, and he's probably right, that Philadelphia right now is not a destination place, specifically for a wide receiver, but maybe just overall, because last year they ran the ball as much as they did in the second half. Jalen Hurts' stats were what they were, and you compare him to the other quarterbacks in the league. If a receiver has control in where he's going to land, Philadelphia is a place down the list of where receivers are going to choose to go. And that does scare me a little bit. Or is it the fact that Nick Sirianni still thinks he can take water and make it into wine? That he can get his hands on a wide receiver and they're going to be better just because Nick is that good a teacher of wide receivers? We didn't see a ton of evidence of that in year one. Why is it that you just ran down a great list, Mac, and you didn't even put Tyreek Hill, who moved yesterday's name, on that list?
Yeah.
And the Eagles got none of them. And they have a desperate need for a big-time playmaking wide receiver and some cap flexibility to be able to do it. Why hasn't it happened here in Philadelphia?
Well, I think your bottom line point is correct, which is if you are a wide receiver and you're looking at destinations to go, and most wide receivers are entirely about how many times will I get the ball. That's of any position, we know it's the most selfish position. Hey, the Eagles had a great running game last year. I enjoyed it. If I was a guy who was paid to catch 100 balls a year, I would not look at this as a place that I would want to go. And let's be honest, the Eagles have a quarterback who is unproven, who we don't know if he's going to be the quarterback in a year or two, as opposed to going to, the LA Rams, going to most of the teams where these guys went, right? They're set at quarterback. They throw the ball. I also think the Eagles were caught flat-footed by the salaries that went out there. And the first one that shocked me was Christian Kirk getting $72 million for 4. Christian Kirk's a nice player.
Yeah.
I don't think Christian Kirk is an elite receiver. Once he did that, that kind of set the market for everybody. And I think the Eagles, you can say they were flat-footed, or you could just say they were just like, we're out on that. And that's okay. Again, you have enough draft picks. I know they haven't drafted wide receivers well. Doesn't mean they always will draft wide receivers poorly. You can get a good wide receiver. If you look at the wide receivers who just moved, a lot of them were mid-round picks. You can get one. They can find one. There's a kid from Ohio State. I would love to see him draft with one of those first 3 picks.
You're talking about Wilson or Chris Olave? Because I'd take
Olave.
Either. I think Wilson will be gone. But
I do too.
You're right there, Glenn. You said something interesting about Christian Kirk, and around the league, people will call it nowadays the Jacksonville tax. At the Jaguars, because they have such a bad reputation, they have to overpay people to come there. And hopefully, you know, if they start turning things around with Doug Peterson, that might change. You mentioned the salaries at the wide receiver position. And you mentioned how the Eagles play, and it's not desirable for receivers who, as you correctly point out, are selfish generally. How many times am I going to get the ball? That's basically what a receiver is going to say. So the Eagles have to be a little less disciplined and maybe overpay a little bit as a tax, so to speak, as a Jacksonville-like tax. Or do you think discipline is the way to go?
I think in theory, I would overpay for the right wide receiver. I think Smith-Schuster is a guy I would have hoped they would pursue, but I think they need something with a little bit of a different skill set than that. No, I wouldn't overpay. I think a lot of these contracts are going to be the ones in a year or two when everybody writes the reviews, the worst contracts of 2022. These are going to be them. And it takes discipline not to overspend when your fans want you to overspend and when you have a gaping need at a position. But still, paying that kind of money for what DJ Chark got $30 million for 3 years, I think, something like that.
I think DJ just signed 1 year. He can get as much as $12 million. But there's a guy.
Okay.
I mean, that's a big number for DJ Chark, but it's only 1 year. I cut him from
my fantasy team 3 times over the years. And by the way, if it's a 1 year deal, yeah, you're right. It's a 1 year, $10 million can escalate. I'll kind of disagree with myself. A 1 year deal, I would almost do with anybody because it's a 1 year deal and then you're going to waste a few million. So maybe that's what I would do. But I would not sign a wide receiver to one of these 4 year, $70 million deals, unless it's Devontae Adams and he signed for what, $200 million?
They're darn close.
So I think I'm just telling you, I think these are going to be the contracts that a year or two from now we all look at and say, what the hell were they thinking?
Yeah. You're going to have another shot at Christian Kirk in 3 years. I'm very comfortable saying that.
It might be 2. Glen Macnow here with us on Birds 365. G-Mac, you and I worked together for almost 8 years, so I know you'll understand this point when I make it and turn it into a question. Lightning rod individual, which means for whatever reason, varying reasons, people start to get an opinion on an individual, and he's either the greatest that ever came down the pike or a blithering idiot. They can't seem to find the gray area. People move to one of the two diametrically opposite ends. Jonathan Gannon seems to be one of those guys that people just stone cold hated him last year and all this guy's no aggression whatsoever to, hey, look at the stats. We're a top 5 defense. What are you killing this guy for? Of course, the answer is somewhere in the middle in the gray area, but people don't like that. So I'm going to get your take on Jonathan Gannon with the one big move the Eagles have made, and that's Hassan Reddick. 2 years running with 2 different organizations. He's a double-digit sack guy, and a lot of it seems to do with how he's used and where he's positioned on the field and being able to tap into his skill set. Do you have faith that Jonathan Gannon is that kind of guy? Because if this is the biggest Eagle move that they make this offseason, other than the draft coming up, as you've correctly noted, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Hassan Reddick. He's going to be scrutinized. So is Gannon. Are these two going to be able to work magic together?
I feel like that's a setup question because I didn't love Rich Gannon. Excuse me. Rich Gannon's fine. I didn't love Jonathan Gannon last year, and I didn't understand after the season all the talk. They're like, "Oh, he's the next great head coach." It's like, really? I didn't see much. Now, part of that is because he really didn't have much personnel to work with. He kept it really simple and boring and unaggressive, and we don't like simple and boring and unaggressive. This is, to me, the make it or break it year for Jonathan Gannon. I do believe he'll have much more talent. I think the draft will address that. I know it's only Reddick that they picked up, but I think they're going to add guys in defense. And by the way, there still are free agents out there they should add. Anybody mention Honey Badger? Still available. I would love that. As far as Hassan Reddick, I'm a little worried because
so am I, Glenn. So am I.
He's not a big guy, so it's not like he can beat you with speed or strength or 1,000 moves. He's got one way to succeed, and they have to set him up to do it, and it will only work if you have somebody else taking the pressure off, whether that's Josh Sweat or the resurgence of Fletcher Cox, which I don't know that I see. Somebody's going to have to be there so that the 240-pound guy didn't get double teamed by a tight end and a tackle every play.
Yeah, I'm worried too, Glenn. I call Hassan a very unique player, so you have to use him correctly, or it's going to be a mess. And he's a tweener. So as we always talk about those types of players, and I always tell Jody's probably sick of me saying this. Everybody talks about Deebo Samuel, and we want to get the next Deebo Samuel. Well, you got to use Deebo Samuel like Deebo Samuel to have Deebo Samuel. In other words, Kyle Shanahan's the one who puts him on all the jet sweeps and the motions and put him in the backfield. 90% of other coaches in this league are going to line him up at wide receiver. That's it. And he's not Deebo Samuel. So if you don't use unique players correctly, it doesn't really matter. So I'm on board with you 100%. Can Jonathan Gannon use him correctly? But to further Jody's point about JG as a whole, is this, and you guys get to talk to the fans more than I do, and you sort of get the beat. Have they ever come out of, this is a new era of the NFL. You can't play like Buddy Ryan played defense. You can't play like Jim Johnson played defense in the modern era, unless you want to see 15 flags and 15 yards and you get 3 personal fouls on each drive. And do you see a disconnect in people not realizing, well, you can't play this way anymore? You have to go about it a different way.
Well, John, it took about 40 years, I believe, for Flyer fans to realize that the point of the game wasn't to beat up the other team. So if we use that as a timeline, Eagles fans are almost there.
All right. The reason why I'm a little more excited about Hassan Reddick than it seems that you two guys are is he did it with 2 different teams.
Yeah.
So if he's this specific, you've got to use him perfect kind of guy to get those double digits. He did it on 2 different teams. It wasn't like someone had the perfect plan to have him achieve the way he did. No, he did it in Arizona, and he did it again this past year with Carolina. So I think there's more skill there than you guys are giving him credit for, even if he's 10 to 12 pounds less than what a player his size is supposed to be able to play at. I really like the kid. I think he's very talented. All right, back to the draft, man. You're putting some eggs in that basket that the Eagles are going to be able to benefit and get better.
Yeah.
Hey, when everybody's supposed to have 1 first-round draft pick and the Eagles have 3, they are certainly in an advantageous position. How do they use that advantageous position? We talked about free agency, but there have been trades. Shoot, the big trade yesterday with Tyreek Hill. They have this bundle of assets to use to potentially get better. And as of right now, they still have 15, 16, and 19. How many picks are they actually going to make? Is one going to get dealt off? Is it going to be a draft day deal or a couple days before like Carson Wentz? How is Howie Roseman going to use these assets that he has?
Here's what I would like to see him do. There's part of me that says just stay 15, 16, 19 draft defensive lineman, secondary linebacker with those 3. But they're not. I don't think they're going to do that. I think the defense is more in need of help than the offense, and Getting 3 potential starters, 1 at each level, would be great. But here's plan B, plan C. Plan B, to me, the guy I love in the draft, and I don't know how high he's going to go. I'm guessing probably around 10, is Jordan Davis, the huge defensive tackle from Georgia. I was at the Maxwell Football Club awards dinner last week. I got to stand next to the house, and we all stand next to athletes sometimes and are impressed by their size. This guy was a house and a half, and seemed, small conversations, smart, sharp, looked at him, looked at the film. Would love to see them take, a first and a second, trade up a few spots to get that. The other thing that I would not be surprised if they do, and I would not have a problem with it, is take one of the 3 picks, find a team you don't expect to be good this next year, maybe the Bears, and trade them one of those picks for their pick next year. I'm hedging my bets with Jalen Hurts is what I'm doing there. I don't follow college football closely enough to tell you who next year's batch of quarterbacks are, but from what I read, it's supposed to be a pretty good one. That would be something that I wouldn't bother me at all if they did that. And then you find out if Hurts can play, if he can be the guy, that's great. You still have your pick next year. Use it somewhere else. If he can't, that's where I hunt a quarterback.
Well, Glenn, you're not the only one hedging your bet on Jalen Hurts. I think, the old adage is don't watch what an organization says, watch what they do. In the case of the Eagles, publicly, they've given vote of confidence after vote of confidence to Jalen Hurts. Clearly, behind the scenes, they checked in with Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, 2 players with no trade clauses. They weren't going to come here for whatever reason. Is there any possibility they continue to hedge that bet this year in the draft because they have 3 first-round picks and you sort of have a luxury? Now, typically, if you have 1 first-round pick, you're not going to take a quarterback. Is that even entered the conversation because they have those 3 first-round picks? And if Kenny Pickett falls to 19, why not roll the dice and have 2 darts for the dartboard? You think that's any consideration?
Oh, I think it's a possibility. If they believe in him, I don't know if they believe in him. I think the fact that they took him out to dinner the other day says something. I mean, you don't take somebody out to dinner just because you like their company, right? So maybe it does. Maybe they're trying to fool everybody by making people they're going to think they're going to draft Kenny Pickett so that they hope somebody jumps up there before them or in the middle of those picks and does it. There's so much strategy and there's so much what's the word I'm looking for? Sending people in the false direction with the draft that it's hard to say. But would it, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much would it shock me if they drafted Kenny Pickett? About a 3. Wouldn't shock me at all.
It's funny what you said, because girls used to tell me all the time that they'd go out to dinner with me because they like my company, and then we'd go our separate ways when dinner.
And then they saw your small hands.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a problem.
Good
and by the way, that's why the Eagles took Kenny Pickett out. It's obvious, Glenn. They wanted to see the steak knife and the tiny little hands.
Well, he can't reach for the check with those.
I think that was predetermined who was paying.
Yeah.
GMAC, since we've all kind of at least alluded to the fact that the Eagles, where they had a chance to be involved with a better wide receiver, weren't the top choice for varying reasons, and part of that was they established themselves as a running team in the second half, good enough to grab a playoff spot. Who's going to run the football for them this year? Is it going to be the same group that did it last year? Is running back a place where they can eventually, if Miles Sanders is going to be the guy, should they be discussing an extension with Miles Sanders? Everyone says you don't ever want to get to that second contract with a running back. If they're going to run the football, and that's the key, well, who's going to run it?
Yeah, I'm not as worried about Sanders' contract, and I understand, and I don't want to sign him to a long-term deal, and I'm happy to have him here this year. And if it's his last year of his contract, say la vie. That's okay. I'm glad they brought back Boston Scott as a change of pace guy. I always liked him. I think it's a year for Kenny Gainwell to make a good step up. Maybe I should have led with him. I'll predict that Kenny Gainwell will get 600, 700 yards rushing and another 500 receiving. I think he's gonna be an impact guy, and they'll find somebody. I mean, again, we talk about draft value. Running backs that go third, fourth, fifth round can really contribute, and no reason to think they can't find somebody.
Glenn, you mentioned Jordan Davis a little while ago, and I was at the Maxwell Football Club as well. And Jordan had mentioned he's going to have a top 30 visit, but you with the Eagles. So maybe put that in the back of your mind for the listeners out there. But you mentioned you're right, he's like a house and a half.
Huge.
Unbelievable. Now, there's another guy in Philadelphia who's like a house and 3/4, and that's Jordan Mailata. Did you see him on The Masked Singer last night? The guy's phenomenal. I've never seen that show in my life.
I don't watch that show.
I don't.
I've actually never watched that show. Jody, I imagine you might watch that show.
No.
Okay.
Not a music guy. I'm a reality TV guy, but not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But several takeaways. First of all, he can really sing.
He really.
I mean,
can.
he's not like a person who gets by as a decent singer. He's like an excellent singer. He really can sing. The other part that kind of had me scratching my bald head was this. As I understand that show, it's supposed to be celebrities in disguise, and the panel's supposed to try to guess who they are. Who the heck?
Yeah, who the heck would know?
Know who the left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles is. And then
they
I saw the
know.
reaction.
You're right.
Jordan Mailata.
Of course.
Like,
I think they're clued in. Yeah, it's interesting.
He's great.
Yeah, my wife asked me, well, what's the point of the show? I've never seen the show before. I just, was sent, obviously, Jordan's clip. Now, I've heard Jordan sing before. It's unbelievable.
The point of the show is that you can have any stupid idea and put it on TV and people will watch it. That's the point of that show. You could have written the whole premise of that show on a cocktail napkin, and it probably was.
I like you too, have never watched the show once. And I think the last time I watched a singing competition show, you and I were partners back in the 90s, MacMan, with American Idol. So it's been a while.
My wife loves The Voice, and I can't get to the remote fast enough.
Voice, American Idol.
I hear it come on. I got to race to it.
Didn't watch any of those. But I do want to reference someone else and their singing capabilities, and we'll move on quickly from it. Jason Kelce is one of those guys. He belted out the national anthem the other day at the Sixers game. Everybody cheered wildly because he's Jason Kelce, not because he could sing a little bit, but everybody just loves him in this town, and well, they should. How key was it? Because we all like to think we knew what Jason was going to do, but we didn't really know. That's why he does this every single year, is to keep people guessing. Guess what? One of these years he's going to go, gotta go, see you later, bye. And we're all going to go, what the hell? What happened? No, Jason always comes back. Well, some year it's going to stop. But it didn't this year. How huge is that for the Eagles?
Oh, it's huge. Listen, was he 33? I may be off by a year. May had the best year of his career, which is amazing. And it's amazing in part because he's a guy who for a for a center gets by on speed. That's the big part of his game. And that's usually the part for any position, any player in any sport that goes first. And he can get downfield 40 yards and lead a run. It's an amazing thing to see. The stability that he brings, you lost Brandon Brooks this year. You lost Jason Peters the year before. It's now he and Lane Johnson are kind of the old men of that line. You have a young left side there anchored by Mailata. That's still going to be a great strength of this team coming forward this year, and gives me real hope that they ain't going to win the Super Bowl, but they can. And double-digit wins, I guess, doesn't mean much anymore. I'm trying to find the area where you say it's a good season, right? Because 9-8 isn't. I don't know about 10-7, but I think here's what I'll say it. I think that him coming back and further development by Nick Sirianni, who I kind of believe in, and we'll see what Jonathan Gannon, to me, makes the Eagles the team that I would pick to win the NFC East. Again, not the greatest division in football.
Wow. Yeah.
But I would say I don't believe in Dallas. The Giants, no, and Washington's going to always be a mess.
Wow. Well, we'll take that optimistic spin from Glen Macnow, host on WIP. Listen to him there, the Eagles official pregame show. You know, Concha Hawk and Brewing Company. I want to mention that, Glenn, because maybe you'll send me some.
I think I got the shirt on. There you
go.
Very
well.
Yeah,
you got the swag.
Maybe I get some free beer out of this. Who knows?
Oh, you guys come out. I'll get you free beer anytime. Jody's got to come out to the PA suburbs. I know that's like a cross-country trip.
Last one from me. One of the things I love with you and Ray is tell us your story. A great part of your program. Any big guests coming up? Anybody you're excited about who's going to tell us their story?
We're doing something different this weekend, which is for the first time ever. And this is the 105th episode of Tell Us Your Story, which is a 45-minute long form interview. We are doing an active Philadelphia player. And this Saturday at noon is going to be Brandon Graham. Tell us your story. We recorded it yesterday, and Brandon is terrific. He's got a great story, and he's very adept at telling it.
Oh, that is interesting. I'll make sure I'm tied to it. All right, last question for you, G-Mac, and this is kind of an overarching question. It was only, I guess, let's see, quick math, 14 months ago when the Eagles decided to move on from Doug Peterson, and their owner, Jeffrey Lurie, said the Eagles were in a transitional phase, but that's why they were moving on with Peterson more than anything else, because Doug seemed to more want to go for wins in 2022, and Jeff didn't know quite if that was the best thing for the Eagles. There's some BS attached to that statement. Probably had more to do with coaching staff hires and actually taking a stand as the head coach of the Eagles and Peterson. But they left it up toward we're in a transitional stage, and Doug wasn't in that same transition with us. Well, the transitional stage did get him, as you just noted, 9 wins and a playoff spot. And I think you had to call that a success since they were coming from 4-11-1. So they did make the postseason. You kind of asked this question, but you didn't answer it. What will we consider a successful year this year? Because it now comes after a 9-8 and a playoff appearance season. What do they need to do to continue the Jeff Lurie transition that he spoke about last year, just 14 months ago?
Double-digit wins and take the division.
No, yeah, you did say division. That's true.
Yeah. Let's take a step up. I mean, they're not a Super Bowl contender, although I'm glad they're in the NFC versus the AFC.
Oh yeah, I think I told Jody I think the NFC is going to house teams in Scranton and Reading because it's become a AAA affiliate. This offseason.
I think a very average team it can make the playoffs in the NFC, and I think teams in the AFC they're loading up. I mean, you look at what Miami's done, and I still don't think Miami's going to make the playoffs in the NFC. They'd be a good team. So for the Eagles, double-digit wins, take the division. I'd say win a playoff game. I think either win a playoff game or lose a close game to a really good team.
Here's where I'll accept your hedge, something you always used to critique me on. I hedge too much. I like your hedge. We'll give you till when you get to the playoffs. And if they've got a shot in the playoff game, then they should win the playoff game. But you need to see how the year falls out to say, all right, here's the matchup on the road against who, and should they win it? And then we'll decide it. But I like your double digit and take the division to know the game's going to be at home next year, which means you'll be right outside doing the Eagle pregame show.
Love it.
You'll love it. We'll love it as well. G-Mac, always a pleasure. Appreciate it. How's Judy feeling?
She's doing okay. Thank you for asking. She had a rough week, but she's doing fine now. Thank you.
Good deal. Please give her our regards. Glen Macnow here with us on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. Still got that much more Birds to talk about. Stay right here.